what role do your reporters have in this in particular? And how much is done by staff that are just working on social media? Most of the reporters have significant responsibility.
Absolutely. They have their own social media channels. So they're tweeting out things, they're putting on Facebook, photos and videos from scenes. They also have access to our social media channels as a station. They can actually retweet themselves if it's off hours, if there's short staff, on overnights, weekends, things like that, where there are less people here at the station.
How have you developed this strategy, the social media strategy as a station? What kind of steps did you go through? Was it just a lot of trial and error, particularly when these were such new technologies that were really forming, and being there with those technologies as they really emerged?
Absolutely. A lot of trial and error with that. A lot of learning along the way, a lot of being flexible and going along with changes in technology, changes in the social media platforms as they developed. And a lot of it's just common sense. A lot of it's just relying on our experience as journalists and thinking about just doing a TV story, but doing it on a different medium. It's not really that different from what we've always done. It's just that it's a different medium. And instead of worrying about moving pictures and sound, it's now more of a focus on still photos and text more so than what we've dealt with before. So, it's just been a lot of learning along the way. And it's been interesting because the people who, as the staff continues to change and continues to turn over, as it does in this business, we have younger and younger people who are more and more familiar with social media. I didn't get a Facebook account personally until I was here as a professional working, yet we've got a lot of people, colleagues here, who had Facebook accounts when they were in high school. Just because it's been that long that Facebook has been around, and staff changes and things change and the world changes.
Let's talk best practices for Facebook and for Twitter in particular, since those really are the two main sources that local news in particular uses. What kind of things do you avoid? What kind of things do you need to make sure? You already mentioned making sure you see a visual, and I think that's really important.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. We want stories to be visual. We want to use video when appropriate. We want to link back to our website when appropriate. This is still a business. We still, I still need to get paid for my work, as does everybody else here. And the way we do that is by selling ads on our TV station and on our website. So if we're putting everything out there just on Facebook and giving people no reason to come to our website, then we're not doing our job as far as promoting our own product. We're basically giving away the farm, selling it for free. So we don't want to give away too much when we're on social media. We want to make people feel like they have value when they're going through their social media feeds, but we don't want to give away too much. Other things we want to avoid, we don't want to avoid controversy, but we want to be very careful when we're posting that the headlines, that the synopses of the story make sense, that they are fair and unbiased ways to present stories. Certainly, we want people to come in to our website and read more on the topic, but we know that a lot of people, just the way they behave, they just scroll through, they just read the headline, they just read the synopsis. We want to make sure that it's not misleading. We want to make sure that it's something that one political side or the other isn't going to feel slighted by. Certainly we want people to come back to our website for the full story, but we don't want to make it seem like we're backing one side or the other, especially right now with what's going on in the last year with all the politics and election.
Sure. What should young journalists now be doing to improve their brand and their practices as they're getting ready to head into the workforce?
I think the number one thing that I've seen from young journalists is they have definitely transitioned from becoming from being retweeters, basically syndicators of information, to sources of information. A sports example, most football fans follow people like Adam Schefter, and he's great at breaking news, and everybody retweets that. We're seeing a lot of reporters just retweet him. Well, you should have that information yourself. It's great to retweet him if you're a student, but anybody can follow an Adam Schefter or a Chris Mortensen or these kind of guys, Ian Rappaport. Your goal as a young journalist should be to be that guy who gets retweeted, or to be that person who gets retweeted, as opposed to just being, in essence, a syndicator of someone else's reporting. Your goal should be to get those sources and to be a source yourself for other people to share out there. And of course, there's the obvious stuff. In talking with young people who are getting started out, the way you use social media in high school and college, and the pictures you might have posted on there are probably not going to be appropriate. And remember that social media, the internet, lives on forever. So it's a good idea to clean up your accounts if you are going to be going into a field where your social media account becomes public, which in journalism it is. Just clean up your stuff and go back and make sure there aren't any pictures that you don't want the public to see out there.
Before I let you go, Scott, let's talk just a little bit about verification and making sure, as you said, that what you're putting out there on social media is actually sourced correctly and that it is true. What kind of struggle is that in this day and age with social media really coming up like the wild, wild west for quite a while? How, as a journalist, do you really get away from that?
Oh, absolutely. That's right. We've heard a lot about the term fake news in the last month or so. And I read an interesting article on Pointer, which made, I think it was Pointer, made a very good point that fake news might be a little bit of a misleading term. It's not necessarily that the information is fake. It's that the information might be incomplete. It might be biased. It might be intended to lead you toward a certain conclusion. While it might take facts, it might spin those facts into a certain direction. It's pretty obvious there are sites out there and even some TV channels out there that may have a certain bias one way or the other, politically or otherwise, that would take valid information but would lead you toward a certain conclusion. As far as making sure your own stuff is sourced correctly, rely on your journalism training. Understand that the primary source is always the best. You want to get back to the original source as much as possible. Sources like, the Associated Press is one we rely on quite a bit to make sure that the information we have is accurate. And of course, the AP has always been one of the leaders in journalism. Things like that. Make sure you're relying on reputable sources. You might have your own opinions on CNN or the New York Times or Fox News, but those sources are going to be more reputable, generally speaking, than another website you may not have heard of. Somebody's own blog out there, somebody just tweeting something out there. Try to rely on, if you don't have the source yourself, try to rely on media outlets that to have good reputations nationally if you're spreading out that information.
And always remember, even you may say retweets do not mean endorsement, but they implicitly kind of do. So
yeah, absolutely.
Scott Hurley, the digital executive producer for WLUK in Green Bay and CW14. Thank you so much for joining us.
Sure. Thank you for having me, Drew. Appreciate it.